I worked at Intergraph for 36 years. If you count the number of hours I put in during the early years, it's probably about 1,000 years, but anyway. In the early years, we worked 12 hours of Monday through Friday, 8 hours on Saturday, and 4 hours on Sunday, but it was a lot of fun.
I like the work that we do. I like being on the front edge of technology. That's one of the things that's always appealed to me, is being on because we've seen so much technology even created out of here. And so that's always been exciting. It's been very challenging work. The people are just the people that I work around. I've built all these relationships over the years that it's just, we have, and the group that I work with for the past 15 or 20 years has been, we just are a really cohesive unit and work well together. And then as my time has wound down and I get closer and closer to that time, we got this cool new building, and I thought, I could probably stay around a few more years for that. And I'm at that point now. I'm at retirement age, but I still enjoy it. I still enjoy the people I work with, and I still like having this to come to every day.
I started in '82, and I call that the baby boomer years, because in the early '80s, Intergraph was hiring a lot of people. Accounting doubled in their staff. We hired a lot of high school and college students that ended up finding their forever partners and marrying and having families. So it was a very close-knit family.
That started my career with M&S Computing, April 1973. There were a few times after that I received my pay in stock, which it didn't seem so wonderful at that time, but it turned out to be fortunate in the long run. I was here from 1973 through 2006, 32 years and a few months. And during that time, my early work was with the Safeguard missile contract. And in the early mid-70s, I guess, that contract began to wind down, and all the founders of the company and many of the key employees moved over to work on a commercial product, and which was the interactive graphics capability that launched the company into the big time in commercial graphics. And I stayed with the Federal Division throughout my entire career. The overall company grew tremendously in the 80s and 90s. One of the highlights of my tenure here at Intergraph was winning the large Navy contracts. There were 3 contracts, and they were like $500 million each. It took a lot of dedication on the part of a lot of people in the company to win those contracts, because at the time we were a pretty small company competing against the large companies out there in the defense industry. When I got there, we were, I think we had about 20 employees. Over time, the company was several thousand employees. We were sort of squeezed out of the hardware business when the large companies like Compaq and Dell and companies like that were really able to mass produce without spending as much money as we were having to spend. Initially, we got into the hardware business because there was no capability out there in hardware to support the graphics we were doing. If I had to pick one of my best days, it was the day that we were notified that we'd won the first of the Navy contracts. Without Mr. Medlock's attention and commitment to it, and and the entire company, we could not have achieved it. They bought this huge piece of farmland out here that was growing cotton, where your building is now. When Intergraph was its most successful, I think we had 24 buildings out here on campus.
One of Jim's favorite things to do was always say, so-and-so. He'd just pick somebody, one of the managers, and say, go fix it. That's it. I'm done with it. Go fix it. And whenever we had our meetings, Keith would sit here, Nancy would sit here, Jim at the end of the table, and everybody else wherever it was in. So we had a very bad situation going on in one of the apartments, and Jim just blew up. And he said that he was yelling, going, carrying on. He said, I've had it, that's it. Keith, go fix it. Keith said, I will on one condition. Jim said, what? He said, if I F it up, I'm fired. So it kind of changed the temperature of the meeting a little bit.
I started here at Intergraph in 1984. On the day that I started, 3 other employees started that same day, and we doubled the size of the department. And it was a running theme with this department that they always tried to play a trick on the new employees. We used to have these huge vax machines, and they took up a whole room, and I mean, they would shake the floor. They was so huge, and they were in the air-conditioned rooms. And we had the reel-to-reel tapes. That's, you know, what we had to do the copying on. So I guess, you know, one of the senior people in the department would go around and show you around and show you the machines and everything. So they would take the new guy in and show him the reel-to-reel tape and start the reel running, and then it would stop, and he'd say, oh, I wonder why this thing stopped. You know, and all the rest of the department would come, because there's a big glass, you know, you could see in there. They'd be hiding behind the seat if he's gonna go for it. And he would take the reel out, hold it up to the light, and say, oh yeah, the end of tape marker is missing, as if he could read it. And so one guy said, how did you do that? It's no way you really read them, you know, just looking through a light. But so we finally got one person, I'm not going to call a name, that finally went for it. And man, we just had a good time with that, and gave him a hard time for months after that.
Back when I was working in Building 6, back in the early 80s, we only had one computer for the entire division of 50 people that we had. It was a PDP 1123, and just to date myself how old this was, to start it up you had to flip in switches from the front panel and key in a program to let it know how to load its tape drive so that it would be able to load its operating system and all this stuff. That's the bootstrap program, where you get the term booting up the computer now. But we had that single computer with a 50 megabyte hard drive that was used by everyone in the division. The hard drive was about this big around, about that tall, had like 5 platters in it. You put it into this thing that looked like a washing machine and screwed it down, hit a button and spun it up, and that was the computer's disk drive. There were only a couple of terminals available for it, and that, like I say, that's what everybody in the division used.
A company like Intergraph going after a company like Intel, I mean, that was, I don't think we at the time knew what the risks were that we were taking, but we just kept pushing forward and going as fast as we could and trying to do the right things in the courtroom. It was good to win that one. I mean, and ultimately it brought in almost $1 billion in revenue to the company, which was sorely needed.
We were very proud of our color display, which we had the first one in the industry. And so we had it setting out in the lobby, and we did hidden line removal with it. And it was rather a hit and miss type thing because it wasn't perfect. We had it, but we were happy enough with it that we would show it to customers. So Guy had some customers one day, and he brought them out there at lunchtime after they ate lunch, and he said, now we're going to do this hidden line demonstration. And the way things worked, you would have a display of all the lines of the graphics of a plant or whatever, and we'd kick it off and it'd go like this, and it would remove all the hidden lines and shade it in color. It was a beautiful image. The only problem was it took a little time sometimes. So anyway, Guy would talk for a little while hoping it would start, and then if it didn't start, well, then he'd say, well, we haven't got it just right yet, and he'd go get them back into the office and go try to do it later. But one day he had an important customer out there, and after lunch he said, I wanted to do this demonstration. He talked about it, they hit the button, nothing happened. Guy talked and he talked and he talked and he talked and finally gave up and walked them back into the conference room. About 4:30, they were leaving for the day, and as they stand out there by that terminal, he goes, eh. And guy caught it out of the corner of his eye, caught that it was now working 4 hours later. So he, I forget what he said, something like someone must have been doing another demo or whatever, but he covered it pretty well. But we sold a lot of those.
Would never a dull moment apply as far as 35 and 40 years go?
No, we did. We have worked hard and we've played hard. And when we first started, remember we were doing baby showers and wedding showers, and now we're doing retirement parties and
That's right.
funerals. And
That's right.